So I've noticed a couple of interesting trends recently, I guess, in the firearms world. One, it seems like people are kind of having a tendency to get tired of the tactical scene, which to me is kind of cool, kind of interesting. They seem to be kind of going back to the basics, whether it's how they set their firearms up for for defensive purposes, or I guess the type or the style of firearm that they're choosing. Last year I was lucky enough to take part in 6 different training classes, 3 pistol, 1 rifle, 1 shotgun class, and a force on force. And one of the interesting things that I noticed is it seems like a lot of guys that had these super high-end raced out ninjafied guns seem to be the same guys who were having the most amount of issues, whether it was reliability or durability issues. For the most part, those of us who were running our guns, I'd say at least 90% stock, really didn't seem to have those kind of issues. They weren't finicky with ammunition. We weren't having any kind of stoppages unless they were planned with dummy rounds. A second thing, one of the other thing I noticed was it seems like the market or people's tastes seem to be changing a little bit. For example, like the Brownells line of old retro AR-15s. Man, you may not like the specs of those guns, but to me, I think that's cool as hell, because to me, probably the sexiest type of AR in the history of the world would be, I think they're called Colt Commandos, like the short little SBR M4 style AR-15s or M16 that they were running in the movie Heat. And I think today, if I were to go out and just buy an AR-15 for myself, I think I'd want to get something like that, kind of like the Colt M4 that I had, which I don't, unfortunately, because I traded it for a Norinco AK, which that's fine because AK's life. But yeah, so laying on the table in front of you, this is just kind of like, I guess, my take on my 3, I guess, main game time defensive firearms. Just I'd say like a 90% stock Glock 17. Other than I did put a cool trigger in it. It didn't need it, but it was kind of neat and kind of fun, and it's held up really well. Of course, it's got night sights. Of course, the AK-74. One interesting thing I did when I first got this gun, I ran it through a fighting rifle class down in Camden, and out of the, I don't know, 18 or 20 of us, I was the only one that was running iron sights. And I don't know if it's because maybe I'm some sort of this, I guess, old fud when it comes to firearms. I mean, not in the derogatory sense where I think that, I don't believe that any kind of firearm should be prohibited, and I'm not, I don't carry like an old, double action revolver in a leather outside the waistband holster. Not that kind of fud. Just I have a tendency to believe in kind of keeping my firearms simple, simple, reliable, and effective. Of course, all of them do have, a few modern takes. I mean, I've got a red dot and a light. Like I said on the Glock before, I made a couple of minor changes. And with this old 870, I've got a light, obviously, for defensive purposes, and a night sight and the mag pull furniture. But mostly that's just, for it's function over form. If you've ever shot the difference between like a factory long length of pull 870 stock versus a mag pull one, I think you'll definitely open your eyes to that kind of change, and there's a good reason for it. Same for the fore end on the 870. Yeah, I guess it looks okay. It's kind of weird looking. It's kind of cool, but mainly it just makes it a hell of a lot easier to mount a white light on there. And if you're going to use any kind of long gun, or I guess any gun for home defense, you better put a light on it. But anyway, back to it. So yeah, it's just kind of an interesting trend that I've noticed, and in all these classes, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but yeah, these guys with these, showing up with these, $2,000, $2,500 raced out Glocks. I mean, they're just, not always, but a lot of times, they suffer a lot of issues. They got comps and red dots, and it just, massive stippling and grip resizing, and they got, gas pedals cut out and holes in the slide and weight reduction slots. And it's, I mean, that's okay if that, if that floats your boat. I mean, to me, it kind of looks like an abortion. I don't know, but to me, you're kind of taking away the one of the great things about a Glock in general. You're taking away the simplicity, the reliability, and the durability. When you start doing all these cuts and weight reductions and chopping and burning and just adding a bunch of stuff, they just don't seem to run as well. With the exception, have you seen my previous video? I did put a Overwatch precision trigger in this gun. Totally unnecessary. A friend of mine, actually 2 friends of mine, had these triggers, and I shot it and I liked them. So I tried it myself, and I've had nothing but good experience. Haven't had any issues. The gun's still safe. So I mean, it's not that I'm against any kind of accessorizing or upgrading or accessorizing firearms. Don't take that, and I hope that's not what I want you to get from this video. It's just I don't know, it just seems to be, maybe it's because of my age, because shit, I just turned 46, and I tend to like things kind of kept simple, and just simple, reliable, and durable, and kind of how they were meant to be built, meant to be ran. And like I said, at any point I could take this red dot off, because it did feel kind of cool. First of all, being the only guy in class that was running an AK-74 in this particular fighting rifle class, and I was using irons, and I didn't see any noticeable change. I will say that some of the guys who were running these super high-end AR-15s with every attachment on it under the sun, they were having issues. They were having stoppages and some parts breakage. But this, basically bare bones, old school AK-74 just kept running. So I don't know, like, to me, it's kind of going back to shotguns. That's another thing. If you guys have watched my channel for a while, you probably know, I've said it many times, that by far my favorite types of firearms are AKs and pump shotguns. And that's another thing I get accused as far as being a FUD. Oh, shotguns, they're not valid anymore, and they're antiquated, and that's fine if you have that opinion. I never have, and I never will. But that's kind of the other trend that I noticed that I like. It seems like, for whatever reason, the firearms industry and the interest in particular firearms tends to kind of ebb and flow. And for whatever reason, it seems like, I guess, shotguns are the new in thing now, which I never saw or understood why they died off, because to me, I think they're an incredibly effective tool. I mean, don't get me wrong, if I had to go out in the streets, during a North Korean invasion or a zombie apocalypse, I'd rather have the AK, but the shotgun has its place, and I think it's a incredibly well-deserved of respect as far as for a fighting long gun. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to share a few thoughts. I kind of like where things are going. I think people, and myself included, are kind of getting tired of all of the just tactical faggotry that we've been exposed to for the past decade. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I tend to kind of like a little bit of, I like to mix the old with the new. I mean, it's obviously an old style AK, but I've got a light and a red dot. Same with the Glock, been around since '83. It's got a couple of things on it. Same with the shotgun. The 870, been around since what, the 1950s. But there's certain things I don't really have a problem with when it comes to, I guess, accessorizing them or the modernization of said firearm. But as a general rule of thumb, I just tend to kind of keep it a little bit more, I guess, basic, maybe a little bit on the fuddish side. But so far, I've everything that I've owned and kept pretty simple and taken to training classes, I've never had a problem with, never had an issue. So that's it. I don't know, just a little bit of a rambling video, but if you guys have any thoughts or questions, leave them down below. Later.